in this lesson, we're going to finish out the forks for our concept bike. So we've already built out the fender and the front pivot, so let's go ahead and finish out these forks here. Now the way we want to do this is we want to extract some geometry from our fender, and the way we're going to do this is we're going to select our fender, and in the last lesson we went ahead and we grouped these two together. And what I want to do is actually open this group, and this will allow me to select each piece of this fender. Now I just want to extract geometry from this back part here, not necessarily the front. So that's why we want to open this group. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and make a copy or clone this fender. So we can go to Edit and Clone, and here we're going to make a copy. So we'll just hit OK. And what you'll see here is whenever we go to our Modify panel, we're going to go ahead and adjust this. We want to take our surface steps. We want to take this down to like 4. So we'll type in 4 here. And you can see it's underneath our existing geometry that we had before. And the reason I want to take these steps down is because we want to work with just a little bit of topology or a little bit of polygons. So if I had this up at steps on 20 and I converted this to an editable poly to access those polygons, you'll see that I get quite a bit of topology here. So I'm going to actually just go ahead and undo that, and I'm going to take that surface and we're going to take it down to 4, and now whenever we convert it to an editable poly, we have fewer polygons to deal with. Okay, so I'm going to go to polygon mode, and I'm going to select just these 4 polygons right here. And what I'm going to do now is I'm switching to my perspective view. I just hit P on the keyboard, and I'm going to go ahead and extract these polygons from this geometry. So I'm going to hold down Shift on the keyboard and move this off in the Y direction. And you'll see this saying clone part of mesh, and what it's asking is, do we want to make it its own object, or do we want to make this part of our fender? And what I want to do is just make it its own object. So I'm going to call this fork and hit OK. So now that we're finished with extracting that geometry, we can actually just turn off polygon mode and delete that fender. Okay, we don't need all of those polygons. Okay, so let's select this geometry here, and what we're going to do is actually move this back on over toward our fender, and we're going to extrude these polygons. So let's go to extrude, and we don't want to extrude that much. Let's go down to let's say 1.5 on this. Okay, and we'll hit OK. And what we're going to do now is we're going to get this initial piece right here. So what we can do is go ahead and select these polygons, and I'm going to go ahead and extrude in this shape. But the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to start out with a line. So I'm going to go to my Create panel and Shapes and go to my Line tool. So let's go back to our front view, hitting F on the keyboard. And let's just trace out a line that's kind of in the direction of that initial piece. I'm going to click on one point here and then one up here somewhere. And then I'm just going to right click to end that line drawing process. So let's go ahead and hit F3 on the keyboard so we can see our wireframe. And what I want to do is actually go to vertex mode of this line and convert this to a Bezier corner. And we're going to go ahead and just curve this line just a little bit. Okay? And let me do the same thing with this one, and I'm just going to curve it just barely. Okay, so let's turn that off, and let's go back to our object here. And let's hit F3. You know what, actually, let's hit F3 one more time, and let's grab our line, and let's move it over our existing geometry that we have here. So I just want to make sure that it's lined up here. And what I want to do is actually take this one vertex at the top and just kind of pull it out in the Y, just to kind of give it a swooping direction. I'm also going to move that handle a little bit to make it bend inside. Okay? Alright, so now we can go ahead and select that geometry. And I'm going to go to my perspective view, just hitting P on the keyboard. And we're going to go to Polygons. and we have those selected, and we're going to use a tool called Extrude Along Spline. So let's select the settings here, and what we're going to do is pick our spline. Now I know this is kind of hard to see, it's a purple line here, but we can go ahead and pick this, and you'll notice that our extrusions has followed that line. Now before we hit OK on this, we want to take our taper amount down a little bit, and I'm going to go, let's do like 0.9 on this. Let's see how that looks. I'm sorry, negative 0.9. And that looks okay to me. And what we'll do is we can adjust that taper curve a little bit to kind of even that out. We don't want to go that far. Not really sure why that went like that. Let's do 1. Okay, let's type in a different number. Let's do 0.5 here. That looks okay. And we'll hit OK on this. So now we have that geometry that is supposed to be following up the fender of our bike frame. So now let's go ahead and create the actual fork coming off of this fender. So we're going to select these polygons here, and we're going to extrude this out. Now one thing that I just noticed is that we had a hole whenever we extruded those polygons there, so we need to go ahead and cap those. So let's go to edge mode, and we're just going to select these edges right here, and what we'll do is hit this bridge tool, and it's just going to gap or bridge that gap with some polygons. Okay, so let's go to polygon mode and select these 4. Oop, I accidentally moved it on accident, so I just hit undo a couple of times. Control Z on the keyboard if you want to know what that is. And we're going to go to our front view, and then we're going to extrude these polygons out to get our forks. So I can take this way up here if I like. I'm not going to try and get it exact right now because I'm just going to hit OK, and then I'll move those polygons. Okay. Now what I want to do is go ahead and kind of straighten this up here. So I'm going to go ahead and use the Make Planar, and that kind of squares them out, and I'm going to use X as well, so that way it straightens it up nice and neat with my front view here. Now I can rotate this back, and I can actually scale this using my local reference coordinate system. So if I scale this up, that looks a little more like we had before. And we're going to go ahead and extrude these polygons to get the rest of our fork. I'll hit OK and line this up. Whoop. Let's make sure that we get the right thing. I'm just hitting Control Z to go back. And let's rotate this to match our reference. Okay, so now we've got the major mass of our forks here, and I just want to go to my left viewport, just seeing the front side of this bike, and I want to kind of straighten this up here. This is kind of off to the side, and our forks are going to be more straight up and down. So I'm just going to go to the vertex mode here and select these vertices and rotate them to where they're a little more straight. Okay. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and turn on NURMS, and this will smooth this out. So let's go to our perspective view, and you'll see this smooths out okay here, but we've lost a lot of that hard surface detail. So let's just add some resolution and get that back to where we want it. So we're going to go to Edge Mode and Edit and Swift Loop, and we're going to add one around the edge here. You notice how that tightens that up. And before long, you're going to start to notice that you're going to realize where you're going to need some resolution to tighten some of these details up. I just put one on each side of that corner there just to make that a little more pronounced. And I think I'm okay up here, so I'm not going to worry about that. Now the last thing I want to do, I just want to add a little bit of detail right here on the front. So whenever we have a cap like this, I'm going to right click, turn off that edge swoop or that swift loop tool. And whenever we have a cap like this, we want to add some detail. We can actually use the inset to do that. And we're going to take that inset amount down just a little bit. And I'm going to hit OK. And I'm going to extrude that. Now I don't want to extrude it that high, just a little bit, just to give it a little bit of detail here. and hit OK. And remember, if we want to make this line right here where these two pieces meet, we can actually use that crease function. So let's go to Edge Mode, and we're going to select one of those edges there. We're going to hit Loop, and that'll go all the way around, and we could just use that crease to tighten that up. So now if we turn off our Edge Mode, we can kind of see how this is looking. So let's go ahead and do a quick render. And there's our geometry there. Oops, I accidentally zoomed out there. So that's looking pretty nice there. And you can make any adjustments as you like. So I think we've learned enough to where you could go ahead and make some minor adjustments and even some major adjustments to fit a design that you like here. Alright, so in the next lesson what we're going to do is we're going to start building these spokes for our front wheel.